Welcome back to Red and Blue, a special Georgia runoff edition. I'm Ed O'Keefe. Here's a look at where the vote count in Georgia's runoff stands right now, a gap of just 2,088 votes, with both candidates tied at 50%. We've seen this now in the last 45 minutes or so continue to be that close, with about 74% of the vote in. They are that close yet again in Georgia tonight. We will continue watching those votes come in, and as they do, lawmakers here in Washington are considering the potential effects of the results on Capitol Hill. If incumbent Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock defeats challenger Herschel Walker, Democrats will win a 51st vote after already securing control of the Senate. Political analysts are also examining how the race will impact the 2024 presidential election. Former President Donald Trump has long supported Walker. He was his hand-picked contender for this race, despite many of his candidates losing in the November midterms across the country. For more, let's turn to political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns and chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa. Caitlin here with me. If you're somebody outside of Georgia tonight going, why on earth should I care about this? We have prepared a reminder of the magic of 51 versus the continuation of 50-50 and why Democrats are so hopeful.
Right. And with the Senate control no longer on the line, it does make a difference whether it's 50 or 51. For example, if you have 51, that means that you don't have to have Kamala Harris come every time to break a tie-breaking vote. It means that you can actually control committees outright and not have to split them. That makes a big difference. It makes a big difference for nominations, specifically judicial nominations. They can get those through much more easily with that in mind. Also, talking to Democrats, they keep pointing to further down the line in 2024. I know we're trying to get through this election, but the next one is important too insofar as Democrats are going to have to defend a lot of territory in the next election. They are defending twice as many seats as Republicans are. If they can put Georgia away here, it also helps them down the line. And it will be really interesting to see what the coalition is that the two candidates bring in. It will give us a lot of data points in terms of whether and how Democrats are able to win in these newer battlegrounds like Georgia, and also, how Republicans, as they are trying to figure out how to move forward after the midterms, what the coalition for Warnock looks like, for Walker, if they are unsuccessful, what that means for the future of the party and Donald Trump's involvement in it.
If we have that map again, we should show people what Caitlin was referring to here in terms of the races that come 2 years from now. There will be 33 U.S. Senate races. As of now, that can change due to retirements or deaths or resignations or whatever. Of those, 23 of them are held by Democrats or independents who caucus with them. Only 10 by Republicans, and those red 10 are pretty safe. Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Nebraska, Indiana, Utah. You look at the blue ones, you got swing state Wisconsin, swing state Michigan, swing state Pennsylvania, West Virginia, of course, where Joe Manchin is,
Montana.
Arizona, Montana. Trickier for them. They acknowledge it's going to be a bit of a slog. Things can change, but they could lose their majority, basically, in 2024 if things flip around. So having Warnock for Democrats tonight, obviously, would be a big help for them. Robert Costa, who's watching this with us as well, I imagine you've been talking to Republicans today or in recent days about all this, and win or lose, this is not exactly what Republicans had wanted. They wanted an outright majority in the Senate, and they're not going to get it.
In the final days of this runoff campaign, it's evident that Herschel Walker, the Republican nominee, has been embracing the governor, Brian Kemp, who just won weeks ago. But former President Trump's fingerprints are all over this race tonight. He endorsed Walker ahead of the primary. He lifted him in that primary race. And this is yet another challenge to former President Trump standing inside the Republican Party as he starts to make his way in the 2024 presidential race. Tonight comes after Trump-endorsed candidates like Doug Mastriano running for governor in Pennsylvania, Kari Lake running in Arizona were defeated in their respective gubernatorial bids. Other candidates across the map like Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania lost. So the early returns show a razor-thin margin for now. We'll keep watching it. But regardless of what happens tonight, this will show how former President Trump is going to be perceived by some of his possible rivals. They're all watching Georgia tonight to see how close this race is. If Walker wins, that maybe helps Trump's argument that he should be the standard bearer in 2024. But if Walker is defeated tonight, it could create an opening, some of my Republican sources say, for other potential rivals to get into the 2024 race. People like former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, current and outgoing Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, possibly even Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who says he's not thinking about it, but has been talked about by donors as a possible contender. They're all watching Georgia, at least their allies and donors are, I'm told, and wondering, what does this say about Trump? What does this say about when and if people get into the 2024 race early next year?
And the basic wager, and this is for both of you, is that a Brian Kemp-like Republican or a Doug Ducey in Arizona-like Republican is the kind of Republican who wins the battleground states that are needed in order to win the White House, right? That's essentially the calculation.
Right, and talking to people in Georgia, I mean, what's interesting about what Kemp was able to do was he was able to win resoundingly without Donald Trump's help. In fact, with Donald Trump putting a target on his back. Remember, Donald Trump ran a primary challenger against Brian Kemp. He defeated him and won very safely and got about 200,000 more votes than Walker did in the race. So he was kind of proving an example of how you can win without Trump in your corner, and also how you can win, Republicans I've been talking to say, by focusing on the issues that people care about. And so when you look at the race that Kemp won, he was laser focused on the economy, on inflation, and things that he was able to do, in his words, in Georgia, running on record, running on kitchen table issues. And you've been hearing, to Bob's point, people like Glenn Youngkin, others kind of saying, look, we need to stop looking backwards and start looking forwards.
And Robert, real quick, the timing on all of this is still sometime after the holidays for others who are thinking about it, right?
It appears to be that way, Ed. A lot of contenders, they don't want to get into the race around the holiday season because they believe that it won't generate the kind of attention they might need to compete against a former president who has such immense standing with that core coalition of Trump movement people inside the Republican Party. Part of why, I'm told by Trump allies, he got in early was to create some reservations among possible rivals about whether it was worth getting in. Maybe he wanted to get some traction early in the race. But what's unusual about Trump's early announcement is that it was explained to many reporters, including myself, as an attempt to stave off people like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. Yet since Trump has gotten in, he has not been holding rallies. He has not had a busy schedule. He made his announcement, and then he is somewhat, politically speaking, in terms of schedule, logistics, events, faded a bit from the scene. Yet he's facing a growing list of controversies, most recently the guilty verdicts today for the Trump Organization, a business so closely associated with his public life, and the controversy over his recent dinner with white nationalists and anti-Semites.